I'm Dr. David Javitch from Javitch Associates in Newton, Massachusetts.
People aren't really good at reading other people's nonverbal.
I've been an organizational psychologist, which means I work with people in organizations, large and small, national and international, on any of a variety of topics. And the topics that I speak on are also the topics that I teach about in graduate school, and also the topics that I teach to executives in in-house speeches.
Whether it's formal leadership or informal leadership. You know, we know who's at the top of the hierarchy, the top of the organizational chart, but clearly there's people...
I always talk to my client first and try to find out what his or her needs are, what he or she would like to accomplish. Most people are interested in leadership issues because a company without an effective head, without knowing exactly where it wants to go, is a company that's rapidly going to go nowhere at all or down deep. Prevailing is the goal. And Webster defines prevailing as mastering and gaining an advantage over your task, over your profession, over other organizations if you're in a competitive situation, but prevailing. So being out there, not that you had to sell off half of your assets, fire half of your people just to survive, but what do you need to gain advantage over and prevail in our world? How can you stimulate change and progress to create new and better methods, to create and develop employees who are more innovative, willing to take risks, be part of teams, and what's your role and responsibility in that? Your role, of course, is to continually review your goals and your values. Remember, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up someplace else. No effective leader can be a leader without an effective team. So I do a workshop entitled Building the Most Effective Team Possible. And that team, which is really achievement-oriented, bottom-line productivity-oriented, talks about the strengths and limitations of team members, how to select team members, how to build, analyze, and diagnose a team that may or may not be functioning well. What we want you to reject, which we talked about keeping, we want you to reject what we call the tyranny of or. We used to say, well, we can do either this or that. Now I teach creativity, and I know that's the wrong way to go about looking at how to improve people, their thoughts and processes. It's not how can we increase efficiency or increase quality, but it's how can we increase efficiency and increase quality. How can we increase satisfaction, not or increase revenue, but how do we increase worker satisfaction, patient satisfaction, employer satisfaction, and increase revenue? Increase full-time equivalents, FTEs, and save money at the same time, which may seem like opposite thoughts, but it can happen.
And I'd like you to write down at least one thing that you do in each of these categories that shows, and this is just for you, I'm not going to read it, we're not going to publish it in the paper.
I always ask a series of questions and ask them to jot down their responses so they can take them home, so they can leave the audience, leave the presentation, knowing that they're going to do something different. They'll have a different skill, a different perspective, or different awareness than they had when they first came in.
As leaders, can we motivate or we get people to be motivated? Because confusion about that.
Yeah, I teach a course in motivation actually and do a lot of public speaking on motivation. So I could, expound on 10, 20, 30 theories of motivation if you want, but you can't motivate anybody. That's the major surprise. Or as we say in Boston, you can't motivate anybody. You simply can't. The most you can do is to create the atmosphere that allows and encourages people to grow, develop, and do what they want to do and be motivated. The old statement, you can bring a horse to water but can't make it drink, is so true. How many of you have kids? Well, how many of you have ever seen a kid? Okay. How many of you have teenagers? There's aspirin and Valium in the corner there for those of us who have teenagers. I almost always like to have the most impact possible. I'm not just there to give a speech and get a paycheck and leave, or teach a seminar, have some fun and leave. I'm there to be able to impact other people. I impact them with my knowledge, I impact them with my humor, my interpersonal relationships, and my general style of how I mix in with the crowds very easily. But I specifically want to impact people who will have an impact on others. I could spend a lot of time in the bottom of an organization, and the people that I will impact themselves and the job they're doing. Or I can spend a lot of time at the top of the house, so to speak, and have an impact on people who will have an impact on a lot of other people. And those are the people that I'm looking for. Those kind of people are my target audiences. People who can definitely impact other people to make organizational life far more productive, far more positive, and an interesting and fun place to work. Because productive workers are satisfied workers, and we know that satisfaction has a key part in affecting and impacting productivity and morale. So what can we do to help employees feel positive, feel happy? Because our bottom line is we want to increase revenue, we want to increase productivity, but we also want to make sure that our employees are happy. How many of you like being a leader? Raise your hands. Oh. How many of you dislike being a leader? Fair amount. How many of you like change? Oh, wow, that's unusual. Most people don't. How many of you don't like change? Okay, there they are, the people I know. Well, okay. One thing that I really like doing is interacting very much with the people in my audiences, whether it's an audience of 5 to 10 or 200 or 300. I think you're in the wrong seminar. All of my workshops and even a fair number of my speeches have a didactic component, which means I'm talking to and with my audience. But more importantly, they always have experiential parts where I ask you to try on some things, whether it be role-playing, whether going through a quote-unquote game that's really no game at all, but the participants feel like it's fun. Then all of a sudden they say, hey, I think I'm learning something. And I carry that one step further and say, hey, I bet you can use this when you go back to your workplace. And most often they do. The big secret is money doesn't motivate, okay? It doesn't motivate. Certainly you have to have a basic amount.
The presentation was put together very well. I think coming out into the audience and getting interaction kept the audience on their toes, so that, geez, it could be me next that he's using as an example. And I think those types of things versus up there turning your back and just lecturing, and I think you brought the audience into your program.
We are looking at the kinds of steps to change that you outlined for us today, and some of the leadership qualities that you went over. We found over discussion over the course of the year, we found to be something that we need to look at in order to accomplish the short and long-term goals. So I found it very relevant today.
It kept my interest. The time went by extremely fast. It was very informative, and it's something that I can take back to my manager as well as my staff.
Good.